Well, welcome everyone to our week 2 hangout for our CMALT CMOOC, and great to have a few new faces on the hangout today. We've got Donna all the way from Nelson. Hi, Donna.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
And we've got Steve all the way from up north somewhere.
Whangaparaoa. Not too far.
Whangaparaoa. Yeah. And Vikal all the way from West Auckland.
Ooh.
And me, I'm at our Manukau campus. So we're just waiting for our team from Nelson to join us. Hopefully they join us, but if they don't, they can watch this later anyway. So today's all about seeing where people are at. It's about week 2 of the CMOOC, which is about operational issues, the area of the CMALT portfolio, and just generally finding out how people are going and if there's any questions, any issues, and just giving people a bit of an overview. So I know Stephen did a bit of work on his portfolio last year. Hopefully he's updating that. And Donna, this is your first go through, and I see you did your homework for week 1, which was great, and shared it in the project bank, so thank you for that.
No problem.
And Vikal's one of our recidivist CMALTers, but he's well on his way now, which is great. So I just thought I'd do some screen sharing, and we can just look at what we're up to with week 2. So I'm just going to bring this up, start screen sharing. Okay, so hopefully you see Safari and the Hangout event list there coming through on the video.
Yep.
Yes, very good. Okay, so I just flicked to our WordPress, cmaltcmooc.wordpress.com, and this is our hub site, and you can see we've got the post there for week 2, which is about exploring operational issues, and that's the first main core area of the CMALT portfolio. If we have a look at our weekly activities, you see the first week was about the contextual statement, which is kind of like you introducing yourself, your motivation for being involved in teaching and learning, and that's the first part of a CMALT portfolio, but it's not actually marked as such because it's very much personal sort of a statement. The second week we look at the first real part of the portfolio, which is exploring operational issues. And what we've done for this week is just to give you a bit of an idea, an activity that you can do to reflect on as part of operational issues that you might like to build into your portfolio. It's just up to you, but it's just a nice exercise to do, which is creating a visitor-resident map. So what we've suggested for this week is whatever portfolio you're using, whether it's WordPress, Mahara, or Google Sites, or whatever you're hosting your portfolio in, maybe you could do a reflection on operational issues as a little video or a blog post into your portfolio. And the visual little visitors and residents social professional sort of a map just gives you a little bit of a visual, I suppose, a way of kicking off ideas and how do you use social media, a bit of a reflection on that, and then reflecting on perhaps how do your students use social media, and what are the gaps and what are the possibilities to be able to perhaps engage them more educationally in some of these tools. Certainly there's been a big sort of a blow up recently around data and Facebook. Not that anyone should be surprised really, because Facebook was always been about taking your stuff and then using it. But everyone seems to be happy signing away their lives to Facebook, but without actually realize they're actually doing it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Facebook in the future. So just going to Google+, you can see a couple of people have posted some examples of a visitor-resident map there. Now, this was developed by Dave White in the UK, and there is an official hashtag for this, which is #V&R. So if you want to find some other social media maps from other people around the world, if you have a look on Twitter and search for #V&R, you'll find quite a few there. They do workshops around the UK, and it's basically sort of aimed at sort of getting an idea of digital literacy. How are people using various online tools, what sort of domains are they using them in, and then reflecting on that. So this is one that a couple of our lecturers did yesterday, Amanda and Laurent. So we've got two axes. One is on the horizontal, visitor, resident. So the idea there is in the visitor domain, these are tools that you use occasionally. Maybe you just kind of dip in and out of them and use them, and just use them when you need to, when it's convenient. You don't spend all day there. The resident side are kind of the tools that you use all the time and are much more integrated into your social and professional life and your daily activity. And then the other axis is professional social, which is how you're using these tools. So from a professional point of view, are you using this within, in our context, teaching and learning somehow? You know, as part of a professional online portfolio, which is generally something like LinkedIn. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got social. So maybe you're doing this with your family or your friends. And the interesting thing that we find when we do this with students is they tend to mostly have stuff in the in the resident social area down the bottom left quadrant, right quadrant, sorry. And generally what they have there is Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, and YouTube viewing. And then they generally don't really have anything in the professional, because I guess that's why they're a student. They're not actually employed yet. They haven't built up a professional network. They haven't got a professional online profile. And so that, as educators, gives us the opportunity to be able to start initiating them into that conversation around what would a professional online profile look like? What would be useful for you if you want to get a job? What should you be posting on Facebook? Because you're going to get Googled by an employer, and if all they see is, you know, your party photos on Facebook, then you're not necessarily giving yourself a good start at a job. And then also realizing that students aren't using a whole raft of tools either. When they do their maps tend to look a lot less involved than this one, because they're generally not using Twitter, they're generally not using Google Communities, they generally don't have a LinkedIn profile, etc. And so by introducing them to these tools, we can put some educational sort of frameworks around them and say, well, this is how we think you should be using these tools, and try to model best practice for them. So just coming back to, you know, Steve and Vikal and Donna, how do you find your colleagues or yourself or your students are actually using these types of tools? So I'll just go back and stop my screen sharing for a second. We have a bit of a discussion. So thoughts?
So I know for
Donna.
us, me and my colleagues, we don't have the biggest toolbox as far as all these different tools you've mentioned there. You know, there are some that we use often, but we've just introduced some new ones, and I don't know why that is. I think it actually was off the back of you, Tom, coming and having a chat to me about things like having the LinkedIn profile versus a Facebook page. So we used to have a Facebook page where we would add our students to it. It was a closed group, and we would use it to communicate with each other. But then, having talked with you, you know, I had to add them to my personal profile to then be able to add them to the group. And it just really wasn't a professional way of doing things. So then we looked at making sure all staff have a LinkedIn profile. Mm-hmm. And then we encouraged our students at our last orientation. I gave them information on what is a LinkedIn profile, why is it better to have that professionally than a Facebook profile. So we've used, like, we do listen, and we will implement things that make sense. But often it's just because we don't know. We just don't know yet. So.
And what's the response been from your students?
Well, there's been a few of them have created a LinkedIn profile and have added us, but not everybody. And I suppose that's just the nature of social media and these types of apps, is that people like what they like and they won't all do it, but at least it's given them a why we would choose to do that. And we talked about things like you said, for example, if somebody wants to interview you for a job, they're more than likely going to look up your Facebook profile first. I know when I was an employer, that's what I would do. And if they're a party animal who's out, you know, every other night, I probably am going to make a judgment based on their Facebook profile before I even interview them. So we talked about those things as well.
Yeah, I think that's quite important these days. Steve, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I think you kind of familiar with what we're doing in paramedicine, and it's still quite early days. We've got a small group of us who are keen to introduce different social media, in particular things like Twitter, because we know from a health point of view we can access some fantastic information and have international correspondence live within a classroom environment, which is you know, something which you'd never ever dream of having. So we're in the early stages of trying to introduce that for the first semester, second semester, first year sort of cohort. That said, we do have some resistance from more other, you know, staff members, because it's just too unfamiliar to them. That's always going to be difficult, and I think until people actually see it, how it works and how useful a tool it could be, I think it may well take time. From a student perspective, most students who we deal with are familiar with Facebook and Twitter, which are the basic things, but we haven't really encouraged things like LinkedIn, and I think that's quite interesting from a professional standpoint as to, you know, maybe we should be encouraging a you know, more of a professional portfolio for prospective employers. We do have we've integrated within the program simple YouTube videos as part of a video assessment or video OSCE, which again are not open to public. So we're trying to promote safety online, but at the same time it gives them the skills and the tools to be able to use video within the likes of YouTube to promote their interests. I think we've got a long way to go. And you know, I think from a student point of view, we know what we know the mainstay of apps and channels and, you know, internet-based tools that they use, but it's quite overwhelming at times because there are just so many. And I guess I assume similar to what Donna's saying is that we don't really know which are good tools and which are bad tools, and it's quite hard until we really put them out there and you sort of trial them or tease the students with these apps and to see if they have any value. But the reality of it is that, you know, there are hundreds and possibly thousands of different ways that we can do this, and it's hard for me to know really where to start.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of what we're trying to do with the idea of, say, the project bank and even just the CMOOC, is for people to share best practice and ideas. And, you know, myself and Vikal in particular, that's kind of our role, is to work with people and hopefully give them good advice. So on to Vikal. What are your thoughts, and how are maybe some of these ideas feeding into your CMALT portfolio under operational issues?
Yeah, so in my role as an academic advisor, we actually work quite widely across the institute. So we see, I'll start with the students, and there is a problem with the students. It's like, if they use any tool, they mostly use Facebook, or almost all of them use Facebook. And if they're using Twitter, which is the second tool they might use, or Instagram, they're actually using it for social or to just follow celebrities and for entertainment purpose. So in my PhD, that was a theme that came up. I was like, oh, I'm using Twitter, but I'm actually using it for following Lady Gaga and what they're doing, or Lord, or something like that. So I continuously find this gap between social and academic or for learning. So for the students to make the transition from that social social environment to learning, there's a huge gap. And what I continuously find is that we actually have to support them through that process. And believe me, some of the students, and this is just last year, they said, well, I don't know how to use Twitter. So those who were not using Twitter, they go, I actually don't know. It's so complicated. So this whole thing about, oh, the students know it all and they're so tech savvy, they're actually not. And that is another thing that the staff think that the students know quite more than what they do. But actually, when you start talking to the students, when you understand what they're using, they're actually not very different. So what I find is when I work with students, I very openly say, look, we are learning together. We're trying to see how or what, or explore how we can use these tools for learning and teaching. So that actually kind of grounds that whole issue about you know more than me or I know more than you, but it just focuses on learning and teaching. So then you start building this community where students are happy to share things or let you know what's working and what's not.
Yeah, so I think from the portfolio sort of perspective, it's about two elements for any section in the portfolio of the CMALT portfolio. Sort of bring it back to the portfolio. One is the evidence. What have you done? What have you explored in teaching and learning, particularly with regards to technology? And the second thing is reflection on that. What has been the impact? What have been the issues? How have you solved those issues? So it's sort of evidence and reflection are the two elements of any part of the CMALT portfolio.
Yeah, and I think doing this, the whole diagram thing also gives whoever is assessing your portfolio an idea of what tools you've used. And you might just choose a couple to talk about the issues and how you have supported students and staff and how you actually used it in learning and teaching.
So I'm just going to go, before we go on, welcome Lisa, good to see you.
Hi there, sorry folks, I got caught in a meeting, so I'm in here late, very sorry.
It's all right. So just quickly, Lisa, this is Donna down in Nelson.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Donna.
You know Steve and Nicole.
Hi, Lisa.
And Lisa's in our city campus, so I'm at our Manukau campus today. So I'm just going to go back to screen sharing and let's just go through just a little bit more over what's involved in the operational issues part of a portfolio. Okay, so that should be coming through now. So the digital literacy sort of visitor resident map is kind of an exercise to get you thinking and thinking around these sorts of operational issues. The operational sections itself, if you look at the CMALT guidelines, is broken up into sort of two main areas to provide evidence and reflect on. One is an understanding of the constraints and benefits of different technologies. So from your experience and through your discussion and reflection in your portfolio is trying to demonstrate that you do understand that there are constraints and benefits for a whole raft of technologies. We've been discussing some of these around social media just now. And the second part of it is part B, the technical knowledge and ability and the use of learning technology. So that would be, I suppose, providing evidence of how you have supported other people, supported colleagues, supported learners, providing a link to your LinkedIn profile, providing a link to your Twitter stream, etc. if you want to use those tools. It could be any sort of technology really, but it's just providing evidence of how you've done that and then how you've started to try to conceptualize and integrate that into teaching and learning. So those are kind of the two main parts of operational issues, which as a title itself is not particularly, doesn't really give you an idea what it's after, but it's those two parts, understanding constraints and benefits of technologies and technical knowledge and ability in the use of learning technology. And the third part there, which is kind of what we just talked about, is supporting the deployment. So particularly for people like myself and Vikul and Lisa, that's the biggest part of our job, is supporting other people and colleagues. But as a lecturer yourself, often you'll find when you start engaging with new technologies and new innovative ways of teaching and learning, people will start coming to you and asking you, for advice and how did you do that, and what should I do, and what's a good tool to choose. So just like I said before, Donna, is there's so many things out there, which are the ones you should choose, and that's where you go and pick the brains of other people who've done some stuff and learn what they did right and what they did wrong, etc. So that's kind of the I guess the brief outline of operational issues. Now I know Lisa has been working hard on her visitor resident map and doing a blog post about it. So just waiting for her to share that with the community.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
That will go up today.
Very good.
It will go up today, I promise you.
So are there any questions around that? Any other issues people want to discuss?
I guess with doing that map thing, it was deciding what applications or what software you use personally and professionally, and where it actually crosses over is probably not the hardest bit. It took a bit of thinking as to what to put where.
Yeah, so I think the key with doing the map is then interpreting that for the person who's looking at it, because everyone's going to be different, and it's a very personal, reflection. Yeah. But it's that reflection that is the key in the CMALT portfolio. It's reflecting on your experience and the impact of that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we do have one viewer watching this, so I presume that's probably Paul. In the team, but
if you're Paul,
anyone can watch this later, so it'll be archived on our YouTube channel. Hey, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. It's been great to have Donna, particularly for first Hangout ever. Awesome.
First Hangout ever, yes.
Yeah, and this is archived, so this is evidence for you that you've engaged with Hangout. So there you go. And Steve, all the way up from Whangaparoa, trying to show off his view out his lounge. And thank you, Lisa.
Reflection. That's black.
yeah, it's just a picture behind you, I know.
And Lisa and Vic also. Thanks, guys. And I'll stop the broadcast now, and it'll get archived. So we'll catch up with all of you next week.
Thank you, Tom.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Donna.
Tom.
See ya.